afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our media availability for July the 6th. We have as interpreters here today Randy Dezwenka and Tanya Adler, and we're very grateful for their help. You'll hear in a moment from the Mayor, and Adam Laughlin, Interim City Manager, and Mary Pearson, Deputy City Manager of Finance and Corporate Services, are also here if you need more technical answers from them about anything related to the budget. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Catherine. Well, a couple things to touch on today, and then happy to take your questions at the end. Today, City Council completed our debate on a very comprehensive motion regarding the Edmonton Police Commission and Edmonton Police Service. And I want to recognize, first of all, the spectrum of perspectives that have led us to today's final outcome. There's no doubt that whether you're a member of the police service, a family of a member of the police service, the police commission, or a member of the community that shared their experiences, good and bad, with police, it's been an emotional journey these past few weeks. I do want to recognize that everyone's opinions did help shape positive change that lies ahead for us. No system is perfect, no human system anyway, and in the spirit of continuous improvement, we've had to get to changes that will lead to system improvements without forgetting that police still play an important role today in our community alongside many others. Now, as I mentioned last week, this motion, which did pass today, is the first step in ensuring the City of Edmonton builds a more just and fair community safety model, new community safety model, that looks past traditional policing into a more holistic approach to community safety and well-being. This holistic approach includes prevention and community safety initiatives, building on those that we've had in the past, such as more permanent supportive housing to help end homelessness here in our city, and reduce the calls for service that go along with the criminalization of homeless that we see today. And this looks out past the traditional model and gives the city more direction also to invest some of the redirected funds into human services and social safety net and community development ecosystems here in Edmonton, responding in part to the calls for redirection of funds towards prevention. So we'll be using the $11 million from the police budget in the coming years to do that work. And our hope is that this reallocation of funds will allow us to better serve folks made vulnerable by the many cracks in the system around us. It will also allow us to launch a community safety task force. And this task force is one of the most impactful developments coming out of debate on the motion and the public hearing, as it gives the community more direct oversight and say in the evolution of an evolving approach to community safety and well-being here in our city. This task force would provide council with funding suggestions and policy changes that will go beyond what we've discussed here in today's motion. This nonpartisan task force will also look at what the divest and defund trends and policing change models mean out there in the world, and review practices that have an impact on reducing racism, discrimination, and excessive force, for example. They'll also provide a plan that would allow us to better integrate social services currently offered by the City of Edmonton and our partners with the Edmonton Police response, so that we're ensuring that the right and appropriate resources are sent when a 911 call is placed. And we heard a lot about that during the public hearing. Make sure we get the right kind of response and the right kind of interagency collaboration to the different kinds of calls for service when people are in distress in our city. Now, as we heard time and time again in the public hearings, folks have already been doing their own part to keep their communities safe. And this task force would also have the resources and council's authority to help build on that community development and community-based work. Many of the justice system concerns that we heard about during the public hearings, though, do fall into the provincial government's hands. Now, this motion then also does give me direction to advocate on behalf of City Council and our city to the Solicitor General regarding the province's Police Act review, and ask for specifically an independent oversight mechanism like ACERT to be given the mandate for handling all public complaints about police conduct, so police aren't investigating themselves. Also, better accountability for transit police officers and transit peace officers, and also clarification on carding policy that the EPS follows, and to have the provincial government clarify the provincial rules around carding policy, which we've heard from members of the public there remain significant concerns about. Now, the motion is quite extensive, but overall I feel like it does do a serviceable job of addressing communities' concerns by outlining how we will build further on and fortify our community safety models beyond relying only on the Edmonton Police Service. And it outlines how we'll keep our police more accountable to the community as they continue to do their important work. So this work would not have been made possible without Edmontonians generously sharing their stories and their perspectives and their very thought-provoking research with us over the course of the public hearings and by way of an unprecedented amount of correspondence into our offices. Now, I know that particularly some of the sharing wasn't easy and that it may have been scary for people to be so vulnerable in a public forum, but it was important to hear. And so I want to take a moment to thank the speakers and to thank City Council, City staff, police, the Police Commission members who all took part in these public hearings and helped make all of this work possible. And finally, I do want to stress again that the work does not end here. This is just the beginning, and our future does look brighter as a result of these Edmontonians who put themselves on the line to ensure their communities and future generations live in a more just and equitable and safe community. Now, turning to the other big matter that was on our plates today, we also discussed the continued rising cost of the pandemic and the challenges that presents to the city's bottom line. Council heard some pretty distressing budget shortfall numbers from city administration, and overall $170 million budget impact for 2020 alone for COVID, including now a $20 million forecast draw on our rainy day fund, which will move it close to its minimum balance. There's still money in it, but with a $114 million shortfall now forecast for next year as well, we may need every dime that we have in the rainy day fund. Unfortunately, these budget concerns, though, are not unique to Edmonton. Big cities across Canada are experiencing a fairly common case of financial crisis as a result of COVID-19. And earlier today, for example, news broke that the large urban mayors caucus of Ontario has been warning of tax increases and more layoffs without coronavirus relief funding. For us, it would likely be service level cuts or cutbacks to infrastructure if we don't receive aid. Toronto, though, specifically, for example, is looking at a 47% property tax increase to maintain services if they do not get provincial and federal help. Now, we're not at that stage yet, and our city staff have, CFO and city manager and the executive leadership team have really worked hard to manage and keep expenses lower than some of the other administrations and jurisdictions around the country, but we are still facing a very serious financial challenge here in the city of Edmonton. So much so that, in fact, administration told us today that if we were to maintain city services at the normal level, and all other things being equal, to cover off our costs would require next year an 8% property tax increase if we don't get help or make further cuts to cover the shortfall. And clearly we need to do both. It's no longer business as usual, but we still also need help going forward from provincial and federal governments. And this is why we still urgently need that help to bridge that gap. And we will cut our way through some of the shortfall here by continuing to find the savings where we can. But it really is the reality that the city will also, in the meantime, continue to incur new costs as a result of the pandemic that we can't avoid, costs with PPE, additional cleaning, and other foregone revenues because things have not gone back to normal. So Edmontonians continue to depend on the municipal services that we provide, and a full economic recovery simply is not possible without robust and vital municipal services like transit, fire services, clean drinking water, garbage collection, all of the vital services that support our well-being, our quality of life, and yes, our health. At the end of the day, though, nobody wants a tax increase, and Edmontonians can't bear any more of the burden, which is why we will continue to advocate for provincial and federal help. I simply hope we get it soon. So I'll stop there, and if there are technical questions, we've got the city manager and our chief financial officer here on deck. Did you have an update? Or just for questions? Okay, so we can go straight to questions then.
We have Vinesh on the line. Go ahead, please, Vinesh.
Hi, yes, Mayor, thanks for your time today. Just, you know, we've heard time and time again that the city needs funding, but there hasn't been any response. How long can the city wait before the situation becomes critical?
Well, that's a great question, Vinesh. Thank you. I mean, on the premise of the question, I wish I could say we agree with you that we hadn't heard anything. Then we'd really know where we stand. But the challenge is we've had a lot of mixed signals acknowledging our problem on the part of both the provincial and federal government, and indications. I mean, we've actually had to wait longer for this than the answer to the hub city question. So we keep getting indications that it's going to be handled, that it's being taken seriously, and that we're going to hear something, you know, hopefully by this week, hopefully by next week. But that's been months now. So the issue really is that I think the need has been acknowledged by both the government of Alberta and the government of Canada. But as with many things in the country, it's now in the you know, the ping pong of confederation to actually sort out what this will look like across 13 provinces and territories. So there is acknowledgement of the issue, and it is in the hands of the intergovernmental negotiators right now. But that's not helping us buy PPE or get transit operators back to work.
Vinesh, since you're the only person online, I'm going to ask Scott Johnson's question. He emailed it in, and then I will come right back to you for anything else that you'd like to cover off. Scott's question is there any update on Edmonton as hub city given the memorandum of understanding that was confirmed with the players today?
Sounds like things are progressing very positively on having two great Canadian cities, Edmonton and Toronto, as the hub cities, and we're very pleased at that prospect. But final confirmation of all of those details really is the NHL's announcement, and so until they make a final announcement that all the roadblocks have been cleared away, and subject again to all of the stringent public health requirements that Dr. Hinshaw would stipulate for Edmontonians protection and players protection and workforce protection. You know, we wait for final confirmation, but with a lot of eagerness about what it could mean for some employment here in our city, and the chance to maybe get a little positive distraction from some of the other challenges that COVID has presented to us.
Thank you for that question, Scott. Vinesh, back to you. Anything further?
Yeah, thanks again, Mayor. Just going back to the first issue, you talked about the police and the very long motion. You know, are you worried that it's simply just too much considering how complicated this file is? You know, are you worried about that aspect, I guess?
Well, thanks for the question. I think the many splendorous motion really honors the complexity of the questions that were brought to us, some of which were budget questions, some of which were accountability questions, some of which were implicit bias questions, some of which were governance questions, and some of which were complex interdependencies of the social safety net, which is primarily the provinces, with outcomes on the policing and criminal justice side. And those are all issues that our council has wrestled with in pieces through our work on housing, our work on poverty, our previous anti-racism work. But I don't think we've ever zoomed out and looked at it all at the same time in the way that we have over the last couple of weeks. And I think what we found is that obviously no single motion, however comprehensive, is going to address all of those issues. So I think our commitment going forward, and a big part of the motion, is identifying more work to do to keep the conversation alive and continue to involve diverse voices within community in evaluating the issues and coming up with solutions to them through the Community Safety and Wellbeing Task Force in the coming months. So I think fundamentally, I hope that people who are keenly interested in these issues have a chance to read the whole motion, because there is a logic to it. But I think the bottom line is there's a commitment to continue a holistic conversation about justice for people in our community, to feel fully included in community life, including their interactions with people entrusted to protect them and protect the peace, whether they're transit peace officers reporting to the city or police officers reporting to the service and the police commission, or whether they're mental health workers dispatched to a call. And ideally, we want to optimize how all of those pieces of the system work together more effectively for the investment that we put in it.
Thanks for your questions, Vinesh, and thanks to all of the media for your patience with us today during what was a long day of deliberations for Council. Thank you, and we will speak with you soon.
Thanks,